Right now, across the middle of the United States, the temperature is climbing toward a number that sounds made up. 115 degrees. Not the feels like number, not with humidity added in, the actual temperature of the air outside. That is hot enough to fry an egg on a sidewalk and still have the sidewalk be hotter than the egg. That is hot enough to send you to the hospital just from standing outside too long. And in some places, that number might go even higher before this is over. To put that in some kind of perspective, 115 degrees is hotter than the hottest day ever recorded in cities like Atlanta, New York, or Chicago. It is hotter than the hottest day ever recorded in most of Europe. There are places in the Middle East and North Africa that hit numbers like this, and when they do, entire cities shut down. Schools close. People are told to stay inside by law. That is the kind of heat we are talking about, and it is about to park itself over the heartland of America for nearly a week. But here is the thing. The heat is not the only problem this week. It is not even close. While half the country bakes under what might be the worst heat wave in years, the other half is about to get slammed by wave after wave of violent thunderstorms. Not just one bad afternoon, not just one rough night. We are talking about days of storms lining up like trains on a track, rolling through the same towns over and over again. Storms that can drop hail the size of golf balls onto your car. Storms that can send winds strong enough to rip a tree out of the ground and throw it into your living room. And storms that can spin up tornadoes with almost no warning at all. And if that was not enough, there's a third danger hiding behind all of this. One that most people will not even think about. One that does not make the big, scary headlines. But it might end up hurting more people than the heat and the storms combined. I will explain exactly what it is and why it is so sneaky. But first, you need to understand how all three of these threats are connected. Because once you see how one creates the other, and how the second one feeds the third, you will understand why weather experts across the country are losing sleep right now. This is not a normal week. This is the kind of week where everything lines up at the worst possible time. The heat feeds the storms create the hidden danger. And the hidden danger is the one that catches people off guard because they think the worst is already over. And the craziest part? There is something strange happening over the Atlantic Ocean right now that looks like good news on the surface. But underneath, there's a twist that could make things much worse later this year. We will get to that too. Most weeks, we deal with one big weather threat at a time. Maybe it is a heat wave. Maybe it is a storm outbreak. Maybe it is flooding. But this week, the United States is dealing with all of them at once, and they are not separate problems. They are all pieces of the same puzzle. And once you see how they fit together, the whole picture clicks into place. And honestly, it is both fascinating and a little terrifying. So let me walk you through all of it, step by step, where the danger is, when it is coming. And most importantly, what you can do right now to keep yourself and the people you care about safe. And speaking of keeping your family safe, if this kind of week scares you and you realize you do not actually have a plan for when things go wrong, I put together something that can help. It is called the Family Disaster Survival System. It is a step-by-step guide that walks you through exactly what to do before, during, and after the most common weather emergencies in the United States. Heat waves, tornadoes, floods, hurricanes, power outages, all of it. No confusing jargon, no fluff. Just a clear, simple system that you and your family can follow when it matters most. I will leave the link in the description and in the top comment if you want to check it out, because a week like this is exactly why I made it. All right, let us start with the heat, because that is where this whole chain reaction begins. Section 1, the invisible oven. There's a blob of super hot air sitting over the middle of the country right now, and it is stuck, not moving, not weakening, not going anywhere, just sitting there, baking everything underneath it like a slow cooker that someone forgot to turn off. Think of it like a giant invisible bowl flipped upside down over the central United States. The hot air is trapped underneath and it cannot escape. The wind cannot blow it away. Rain cannot fall through it. Cooler air cannot sneak in from the sides. The sun just keeps cooking everything underneath that bowl, and with no way for the heat to leave, the temperature climbs higher and higher every single day. And here is why it gets stuck. High up in the atmosphere, there is a large area of sinking air, air that is pushing down, pressing on everything below it. It acts like a cap on a pot. And just like a pot on the stove with a heavy lid on it, the heat underneath just builds and builds. The lid keeps it locked in. The stove, which is the sun beating down on the ground, keeps adding more heat. And the result is temperatures that climb to numbers most people have never experienced in their entire lives. Whether people call this a heat dome, and this one is a monster. Let me give you some real numbers so you can feel how wild this is. Across parts of southern Kansas and northern Oklahoma, the afternoon high temperature is expected to reach 115 degrees this week. Some spots could push even higher than that. Now, I need you to stop and really think about what 115 degrees actually means in real life. because it is easy to hear a number and just move on. But 115 is not just a really hot day. It is a completely different level of heat than most people have ever experienced. At 115 degrees, the road under your feet can reach over 160 degrees. That is hot enough to give you a serious burn through the bottom of your shoes. The metal parts of your car, the door handle, the seatbelt buckle, the steering wheel, they become so hot that touching them can actually hurt your skin. Your body starts to struggle. Your heart has to work harder. Your brain can start to slow down. You might get dizzy or confused without even realizing something is wrong. And here is the part that makes this heat dome so much more dangerous than just a regular hot day. It is not leaving. If you had one afternoon of extreme heat and then the next day cooled off to 90, your body could handle that. You would drink some water, sit in front of a fan, and bounce back. But this heat is sticking around for days. By Saturday, it starts spreading north. Places like Nebraska and South Dakota that normally sit in the comfortable 80s or low 90s during summer are suddenly looking at temperatures well over 100 degrees. That kind of heat in those areas feels completely wrong, like it does not belong there, because it does not. By Sunday and Monday, the worst of it settles in. Cities in central Kansas could see highs around 112. St. Louis could push past 101, and across a huge stretch of the southern and central plains, the heat just keeps hammering day after day after day. But here's the detail that really worries me, and it is the one most people miss. When it is 112 during the day, you would expect nighttime to give you some relief, right? You would think that once the sun goes down, it cools off enough for your body to rest and recover. But under a heat dome, that does not happen. The nighttime temperatures stay dangerously warm too. We are talking about overnight lows in the upper 80s or even low 90s, so you go to bed hot. You toss and turn all night, you wake up hot, and then the next day is even worse than the one before. Your body never gets a break, and that is when heat goes from uncomfortable to actually dangerous. Think about what that means for real people living through this right now. A construction worker who spends 8 hours outside on Monday and then cannot cool down at night. A grandmother in a small apartment with no air conditioning whose home just keeps getting hotter because the walls and the roof absorbed heat all day, and now they are radiating it back inside all night long. A family whose power goes out because the electrical grid cannot handle the demand from millions of air conditioners running full blast at the same time. When the power goes out during a heat dome, things get serious fast. Your house does not just stay warm, it becomes an oven. Without air conditioning or even fans, the temperature inside a home can climb above 100 degrees within a couple of hours. For young children, elderly people, and anyone with a health condition, that can become a medical emergency before anyone even realizes something is wrong. And it is not just people inside homes. Think about people who work outside for a living. Roofers, landscapers, road crews, farmers. People who do not have the option to just stay inside during the hottest hours. For them, this kind of heat is not just uncomfortable. It is a direct threat to their safety every single hour they are on the job. And after a few days in a row of this, their bodies are already worn down from the previous days. The risk just keeps stacking up. This pattern is expected to hold its grip until roughly Tuesday or Wednesday of next week. That is nearly a full week of extreme, unrelenting heat for millions of people. And I cannot stress this enough. Heat does not look scary. Nobody is going to film a heat wave the way they film a tornado ripping through a neighborhood. There is no dramatic footage. There is no wild video to share on social media. It just sits there, quietly, invisibly, and it hurts people. Here's a fact that surprises almost everyone who hears it. Heat kills more people in the United States every single year than tornadoes, hurricanes, and floods put together. That is not my opinion. That is what the data says, year after year after year. And the reason heat is so deadly is because people do not take it seriously. They think they can push through it. They think it is just another hot day. They leave their dog in the backyard without enough water. They go for a run at noon because they have done it before. They leave a child in the car for just a minute. At 115 degrees outside, the inside of a parked car can reach 150 degrees in less than 15 minutes. That is fatal. Please do not let that happen to anyone you love. If you're anywhere near the central or southern plains this week, take this heat seriously. Drink water before you feel thirsty. Stay inside during the hottest hours if you can. If you have to be outside, take breaks in the shade and watch for warning signs like feeling dizzy, confused, sick to your stomach, or suddenly very tired. Those are your body's alarms going off. Listen to them. And check on the people around you. Your elderly neighbor who lives alone, the outdoor worker on your street, the kid playing in the yard. Heat sneaks up on people. Sometimes the person who needs help the most does not realize they need it until it is too late. Now, the heat dome is bad enough on its own, but it is about to create something even worse in another part of the country. Because all that trapped heat is not just sitting there doing nothing, it is building energy. Massive, explosive amounts of energy. And that energy is about to be released in a very violent way. Here is where this story takes a wild turn. Section 2, the storm factory. So you have this giant dome of hot air pressing down on the middle of the country. Nothing can get through it. Nothing can move it. The air underneath just keeps getting hotter and hotter. As far as the atmosphere is concerned, that dome might as well be a brick wall. But here is something really important about weather. It hates being out of balance. The atmosphere is always trying to even things out. When one part of the country is way too hot and another part is much cooler, the air does not just sit there and accept it. It moves, it pushes, it crashes. And when superhot air from the dome runs headfirst into cooler air from the north, the collision is violent, really violent. Think of it like this. You know what happens when you shake a bottle of soda really hard and then crack the cap open just a little? All that pressure has been building and building, and the second it has a way to escape, it explodes. That is basically what is happening in the atmosphere right now along the northern edge of this heat dome. The hot air from the south is pumping moisture and energy upward like a furnace. Meanwhile, a river of fast-moving wind high up in the sky, called the jet stream, is pushing cooler air down from the northwest. Right where those two forces crash into each other, the atmosphere becomes incredibly unstable. All that built-up energy has to go somewhere. And it goes straight up in the form of massive, violent thunderstorms. So while the southern plains are roasting under deadly heat, the northern plains, the Midwest, and the Great Lakes are getting pounded by severe storms. Same weather pattern, same cause. Two completely different nightmares depending on which side of the line you live on. And I want to be clear about what severe storms actually means, because I think that phrase gets thrown around so much that people stop paying attention to it. We're not talking about a regular thunderstorm that rumbles through, drops some rain, and leaves. We're talking about storms that can genuinely destroy things. Storms that can peel the siding off your house. Storms that can drop ice out of the sky hard enough to total your car. Storms that can spawn tornadoes that flatten buildings in seconds. These are serious, dangerous, life-threatening storms. Let me walk you through what is coming, because the timing here really matters. The first batch of storms is already rolling across the upper Midwest. From Iowa up through Minnesota and over into Wisconsin and Michigan, thunderstorms are spreading out through the afternoon and evening. The biggest danger with these storms is a kind of wind called straight-line wind. It does not spin like a tornado. It just blows in one direction with incredible force, strong enough to snap power poles in half, strong enough to pick up a trampoline and send it flying over a fence, strong enough to turn a garbage can into a weapon. Large hail is also in the picture, especially farther west. South Dakota and Nebraska could see storms that grow tall enough and angry enough to drop hailstones the size of golf balls. As for tornadoes today, the official risk is listed as low. And it is low, but I do not think it is zero. There's a zone running from roughly Des Moines up toward central Wisconsin, where the winds near the ground could shift and pick up speed late in the afternoon. When that happens, even a regular-looking thunderstorm can suddenly start to spin. It does not happen every time, but it can happen. And if you are in that area, having a way to get weather warnings on your phone is one of the smartest things you can do right now. Along the East Coast, a separate round of storms is expected to pop up during the afternoon. The area from Cleveland and Columbus east toward Philadelphia and Washington could see scattered thunderstorms with some strong wind gusts. The tornado risk there is very low, but on a hot and humid August afternoon, the atmosphere can throw you a surprise. A quick little tornado that forms out of nowhere and disappears in minutes is never completely impossible when the air is this hot and this soupy with moisture. Down in the desert southwest, monsoon season is doing its thing. Arizona and New Mexico are dealing with rounds of heavy rain, and flash flooding is the main concern in the usual trouble spots. If you live near a dry wash or a canyon, you already know the deal. Stay away from low areas when the rain comes down hard. Water can fill those channels faster than you can run. Saturday is actually the calmest day in this whole stretch. I want to say that plainly because not every day in a wild weather pattern has to be dramatic. Saturday's storms will mainly stay over the interior northeast. Pennsylvania and New York are the areas to watch. Some gusty thunderstorms could roll through during the afternoon. There is a small window between about 3 and 7 in the evening where a quick tornado in central or eastern Pennsylvania is not totally off the table. But overall, Saturday is a breather, a chance to catch your breath before the main event. And the main event is Sunday. Out of every single day in this entire forecast, Sunday has the highest potential for something serious. And I want to be careful with how I say this because I'm not telling you that Sunday is guaranteed to be a disaster. I'm telling you that the ingredients for something really big are coming together. And if they line up the way some of the computer models are suggesting, Sunday could be a very rough day across the upper Midwest. Here is what is happening. By Sunday, the winds up high in the atmosphere and the winds closer to the ground are both going to be cranking hard. The upper winds shift from a northwest direction to a more westerly one. That sounds like a tiny change, right? It is not. It is a huge deal. Because when the wind up high is blowing from the west and the wind down low is blowing from the south, the air between them starts to twist. It rotates. It turns with height. And that rotation is exactly what the most dangerous type of thunderstorm in the world needs to come alive. That type of storm is called a supercell. I know it sounds like something from a superhero movie, but it is a real thing, and it is absolutely terrifying. A supercell is a thunderstorm that has its own spinning engine inside of it. It feeds on rotating air the way a fire feeds on oxygen. And when a supercell gets strong enough, it can produce huge hail and powerful tornadoes. To give you a sense of scale, a regular thunderstorm might last 30 to 60 minutes. A supercell can last for hours. It can travel hundreds of miles across the landscape, leaving a trail of damage the whole way. A regular thunderstorm drops rain and maybe some small hail. A supercell can drop hailstones the size of baseballs or even softballs. Big enough to smash a car windshield, big enough to dent a metal roof, big enough to seriously injure a person standing outside. And when a supercell produces a tornado, it is not usually a weak little spin-up that touches down for 30 seconds and disappears. Supercell tornadoes can be strong. They can be on the ground for miles. They can destroy anything in their path. The atmosphere on Sunday is setting up to hand these storms everything they could possibly want. The amount of energy available for storms to use is expected to be off the charts. Across parts of Minnesota and Iowa, the atmosphere could be so loaded with fuel that storms will not even need much of a push to explode. Experienced forecasters who look at weather models every single day for a living are looking at Sunday's data and raising their eyebrows. That is how loaded this setup is. Here's how Sunday might unfold. The morning could be quiet, maybe some scattered showers, nothing too alarming. The kind of morning where you look outside and think, what is everyone so worried about? But watch the afternoon closely, because that is when things could change fast. A supercell or two could develop across the northern part of Wisconsin. As evening approaches, more storms could fire up and eventually merge together into a massive line that moves across the region like a wall. If that happens, cities like Milwaukee, Grand Rapids, and possibly even Detroit could be dealing with severe storms overnight and into early Monday morning. Damaging wind would be the main concern with that line of storms. But earlier in the cycle, before the storms merge into a line, there is a real window for tornadoes too. That late afternoon into early evening time frame across Wisconsin and Minnesota is the one I would be watching the closest. And this brings up something I really need you to hear, because it could save your life or the life of someone in your family. Storms that happen overnight are one of the most underrated dangers in all of weather. During the day, you can see a storm coming. You can see the sky getting dark. You can see the clouds churning. You can watch and react. But at 2 a.m, you are asleep. You cannot see anything. The sky could be pitch black. The power could be out. A tornado warning could be going off on your phone, and you might not even hear it because you are in a deep sleep. That is why overnight storms hurt people at a much higher rate than daytime storms. Not because the storms themselves are worse, but because people do not know the danger is there until it is right on top of them. Studies have shown that tornadoes that strike between midnight and 6 a.m. are more than twice as deadly as tornadoes that hit during the day. Same kind of tornado, same wind speed, same power. The only difference is that people are asleep when it arrives. They do not have time to react. They do not have time to get to safety. And for some of them, the first thing they hear is the sound of their roof being torn off their house. I do not say that to scare you. I say it because a little bit of preparation right now, today, while things are calm, could make all the difference on Sunday night. So right now, before Sunday gets here, do this. Check your phone settings. Make sure emergency alerts are turned on. If you have a weather radio, put fresh batteries in it tonight. And think about where you would go in your house if you had to take shelter in the middle of the night. A basement is the best option. If you do not have a basement, go to the smallest interior room on the lowest floor of your home. A closet or bathroom with no windows. Get away from outside walls. Just have a plan. Because having a plan when you are calm is 100 times easier than trying to figure it out when the wind is screaming and the power is out. Now, I said earlier that there is a third danger hiding behind all of this. One that sneaks up after the storms pass. One that most people will not see coming. And honestly, it might be the most dangerous part of this entire week. Let me show you what I mean. Section 3. The sneaky killer. Nobody talks about. After a big thunderstorm rolls through your town, there is this feeling of relief. The sky clears up, the wind dies down. You step outside and everything smells fresh and clean. It feels like the danger is over, but sometimes the danger is just getting started. When thunderstorms hit the same area over and over again, which is exactly what is going to happen across the Midwest and Great Lakes this week, all that rain has to go somewhere, and the ground can only soak up so much. Think about pouring water onto a sponge. The first cup gets absorbed, the second cup gets absorbed, but by the third or fourth cup, the sponge is full. It cannot hold anymore. The water just runs off the top and spills everywhere. That is what is about to happen to the ground across a big chunk of the central United States. Storm after storm is going to dump heavy rain on the same areas, and once the soil is completely soaked, every drop of rain after that has nowhere to go except across the surface and into rivers, streams, creeks, and streets. That is how you get flooding. And not the slow, gentle kind of flooding that you can see coming for days, not the kind where a river rises gradually and the news tells you to evacuate 24 hours ahead of time. I am talking about flash flooding, the fast, violent, deadly kind. The kind where a creek that was ankle deep an hour ago is suddenly a raging river that is 6 feet deep and moving fast enough to flip a car upside down. The kind where a street that was perfectly dry when you left for the grocery store is now a brown rushing channel of water by the time you're driving home. Flash flooding happens fast. That is why it is called flash flooding. It can go from 0 to life-threatening in less than an hour, sometimes in less than 30 minutes. There is often no warning at all beyond a sudden wall of rain that dumps more water than the ground and the drains can handle. Flash flooding is the hidden danger I mentioned at the beginning of this video, and there is a reason I saved it for last. Because people take tornadoes seriously. People take heat seriously, at least most of the time. But flooding? People drive through it. They walk through it. They look at 6 inches of water on the road and think, I can make it. And here is the reality. It only takes 6 inches of fast-moving water to knock you off your feet. Just 6 inches. That is not even up to your knees. But if that water is moving fast, it has enough force to sweep you off balance and carry you away. 12 inches of moving water can float a small car. 2 feet can carry away a truck or an SUV. Every single year, more people die in the United States from driving into floodwaters than from any other type of flooding. They see a road that looks like it just has a little water on it. They cannot tell how deep it actually is. They cannot see that the road underneath might already be washed out. They drive in. The car stalls. The water rises. And by the time they realize they are in trouble, they are stuck. And here's what makes it even more tragic. Almost every single one of those deaths was avoidable. All the person had to do was turn the car around and take a different road. That is it. A 2-minute detour, but something in our brains tells us we can make it. We look at the water, and it does not look that bad. We see another car on the other side that made it through. We think, if they can do it, so can I. But floodwater is not like standing water in a swimming pool. It is moving. It is murky. You cannot see what is under the surface. And the road you drove on 100 times before might not even be there anymore. Please remember this one rule. Turn around, do not drown. If you see water on the road, even if it does not look like much, turn around and find another way. No shortcut is worth your life. No appointment is so important that you need to risk driving through moving water to get there. The flooding risk this week is highest from roughly Monday through Wednesday across the Midwest. That is when the repeated rounds of storms will have dumped the most rain on already saturated ground. But flash flooding can happen at any time when the rain is heavy enough. A single thunderstorm dumping 3 or 4 inches of rain in an hour can cause flash flooding even if the ground was dry that morning. So stay aware, stay alert. And if your area is under a flash flood warning, take it just as seriously as you would take a tornado warning. Now, there is one more piece of this puzzle that I want to talk about, and it is the strangest part of this whole story. It has to do with something that is not happening right now, something that should be happening but is not. And it is happening, or rather not happening, thousands of miles away in the Atlantic Ocean. This part is not an emergency for today, but it could become a very big deal before this year is over. Section 4, the quiet ocean with a big secret. Right now, at this point in the year, the Atlantic Ocean should be busy. It should be cooking up tropical disturbances. Waves of energy should be rolling off the coast of Africa, drifting west across warm water, slowly organizing into the kinds of storms that eventually become tropical depressions, tropical storms, and hurricanes. But right now, almost nothing. The Atlantic is weirdly, eerily quiet. And it has been for weeks. If you live along the East Coast or the Gulf Coast, you might be thinking, great, no hurricanes, that is awesome news, I will take it. And honestly, right now, it is good news. Fewer storms forming means fewer threats to your home. But there is a catch hidden underneath that silence, and it is a big one. The reason the Atlantic is so quiet right now is because of something called El Niño. El Niño is a pattern where the water in the Pacific Ocean gets warmer than usual. Now, you might be thinking, wait, the Pacific Ocean? What does the Pacific have to do with hurricanes in the Atlantic? Great question. And the answer is a perfect example of how everything in weather is connected, even things that are thousands of miles apart. When the Pacific warms up in a certain way, it changes wind patterns all over the globe. One of those changes is that it creates really strong, fast winds high up in the atmosphere right over the Atlantic Ocean. These are not the winds you feel on the ground. These are winds miles above the surface. You would never even know they are there unless you were looking at weather data. Now, you might remember from earlier in this video how changes in wind speed and direction can help thunderstorms organize and get stronger. That is what helps supercells form over the Midwest. Well, over the Atlantic, those same kinds of winds do the exact opposite. Instead of helping tropical storms grow and organize, they tear them apart. Every time a little tropical disturbance tries to organize over the warm Atlantic water, those high-altitude winds rip it to shreds before it can become anything real. Think of it like trying to stack playing cards into a tower while someone stands next to you with a fan blowing full blast. You might get 2 or 3 cards up, but the wind just keeps knocking everything down. That is what El Niño is doing to every tropical system that tries to form in the Atlantic right now. So, sounds great, right? Problem solved. No hurricanes this year? Not so fast. Here's the part that should keep you paying attention. All that warm water in the Atlantic, it is still there, and it is getting warmer every day. Normally, when hurricanes form and move across the ocean, they actually cool the water down. A hurricane is basically a giant heat engine. It sucks up warm water from the surface, converts it into energy, and releases it as wind and rain. In the process, it stirs up cooler water from deep below and mixes it with the surface water. So even though hurricanes are destructive, they actually serve a purpose. They release some of the ocean's built-up heat. But this year, no hurricanes have come along to do that job, so the heat just keeps building. The ocean surface keeps getting warmer. The energy keeps piling up with nowhere to go. It is like a battery that keeps charging, and nobody's using any of the power. Now here's the scary question. What happens if later in the season, maybe in September or October, the El Niño pattern weakens just enough for those high altitude winds to back off? What happens if a tropical disturbance finally gets a chance to organize without getting ripped apart? That storm would suddenly have access to all of that stored up energy, an entire summer's worth of heat that has been building in the ocean with no release, and the results could be terrifying. We are talking about a storm that could go from barely existing to a major hurricane in a matter of days. Weather people call that rapid intensification. And it is one of the most dangerous things in all of weather because it gives people almost no time to prepare. Let me paint the picture of what that looks like in real life. On Monday, forecasters are tracking a little cluster of thunderstorms way out in the middle of the Atlantic. Nobody's worried about it. It does not even have a name yet. On Tuesday, it starts to organize a little. Still nothing to panic about. Forecasters issue a watch, but most people do not pay attention. By Wednesday morning, it has a name. By Wednesday night, it is a Category 2 hurricane. By Thursday afternoon, it is a Category 4. And by Thursday night, it is aimed at the coastline and people are scrambling to evacuate with almost no time to prepare. That sounds extreme, but it has happened before. Multiple times. History is full of seasons just like this one. Years where the Atlantic was quiet for months. Seasons that produced just 1 or 2 storms total. But those storms were absolute monsters because they had all that stored up warm water to feed on. It only takes one. One storm with the right path, the right timing, and the right access to warm water can cause billions of dollars in damage and cost lives. And here's the thing about hurricanes that makes them different from all the other dangers we have talked about in this video. A heat dome you can prepare for by staying inside. A thunderstorm you can shelter from in your basement. Flash flooding you can avoid by staying off the roads. But a major hurricane aimed at your city? That is a completely different level of emergency. That might mean packing your car and leaving your home for days, not knowing what it will look like when you come back. That is why the quiet Atlantic should not make anyone feel safe. It should make us all feel watchful. So even though the Atlantic looks calm and peaceful right now, nobody in the weather world is relaxing. I will be watching the tropics closely for the rest of the season. If anything starts to spin up out there, you will hear about it here. But for now, just know that a quiet ocean is not the same thing as a safe ocean. Sometimes quiet just means the energy is building up and waiting for its chance. All right, let me pull everything together because I know I just threw a lot at you. This week, the United States is getting hit from every direction by a single weather pattern. A massive dome of heat is creating deadly temperatures across the central and southern plains. The edge of that dome, where hot air crashes into cooler air, is creating rounds of violent thunderstorms across the Midwest and Great Lakes, with Sunday being the day to watch most closely. Those repeated storms, hitting the same areas over and over, are creating a real and dangerous risk of flash flooding. And out over the Atlantic, a strangely quiet ocean is hiding a buildup of energy that could matter a lot before hurricane season is over. It is all connected. One pattern, one cause, 4 different dangers. And there is one more thing I have not even mentioned yet that just shows how wild this week is going to be. When the cold front finally pushes through later in the week and breaks the heat dome, the temperature change is going to be absolutely jaw-dropping. Parts of the northern plains that were baking under 105 degrees on Monday could be looking at highs in the 60s or even the 50s by Wednesday or Thursday. Some areas in northern Minnesota could dip into the low 40s at night in August. Think about that. In the span of about 48 hours, the temperature could drop by 50 or 60 degrees. You could go from running your air conditioner at full blast to digging a jacket out of the closet. No other country on Earth sees this kind of weather range all happening at the same time, quite the way the United States does. Deadly heat, tornadoes, flash flooding, and near-freezing temperatures all in the same week, all driven by the same pattern. It is wild. And for farmers in the northern plains, that cold snap is worth watching closely because cold like that in August can stress crops in a serious way. If you are in the heat zone, take it seriously. Stay inside, drink water, check on your neighbors, keep your pets safe. If you are in the storm zone, get your phone ready, check your alerts, know your shelter plan, and pay very close attention to Sunday and Sunday night. If flooding threatens your area later this week, do not drive through water on the road. Ever. Just turn around. And if you are on the coast, do not let the quiet Atlantic make you lazy about hurricane prep. The season is far from over. I also want to be honest with you about something. The details of this forecast are still moving. The heat and today's storms, very confident about those. Sunday's severe weather setup, the potential is real and the ceiling is high, but exactly how it plays out is still unclear. The flooding risk for the middle of next week, concerning but not locked in yet. As the days go on, some of these threats will grow. Others might fade. And I will be right here giving you updates as the picture gets clearer. That is the thing about a week like this. It is not a one-time prediction. It is a story that keeps developing. And sometimes the difference between a normal day and a dangerous one comes down to catching a change in the forecast just a few hours early. All right, that is going to do it for this one. If this helped you understand what is coming, smash that like button. It helps more people find this video when they are searching for answers about this crazy weather week. Now I want to hear from you. Out of everything we talked about today, the extreme heat, Sunday's tornado threat, the flooding risk, or the strangely quiet Atlantic, which one worries you the most and why? Drop it in the comments. I read through them, and it is always wild to see how different the answers are depending on where you live. And one last thing. If this video made you realize that you and your family do not actually have a plan for when a heat wave, a tornado, or a flood hits your area, go grab the Family Disaster Survival System. It is the same guide I mentioned at the beginning of this video. It covers exactly what to have ready, what to do when the warning goes off, and how to recover after the danger passes. Everything you need in one simple, no-nonsense system. The link is in the description and pinned in the top comment. Do not wait until the sirens are going off to figure this stuff out. Get it now while things are still calm. Stay safe out there. I will see you in the next one.